Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to the next episode of Breaking into Breaking Bad. Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. Today we discuss Season 3, Episode 11, Albiqui. Before we dive into this episode, Cabe, do you want to give us just a brief synopsis? What happens in this episode? What if you haven't seen it, if our audience hasn't seen it in a while, what do they need to remember?
Yeah, just a few things. Hank is on his way to recovery, and he's struggling in the hospital. He's having a difficult time with it, and he hasn't really accepted getting better. He feels more, I'd say more like a victim. Doesn't want to leave the hospital, doesn't want to give in to getting better, and he's just having a hard time struggling with it. Walt and Jesse are still working in the lab, making progress. Walt is more keen on Jesse's extracurricular activities as far as stealing meth that they're cooking to sell on the side with Skinny Pete and Badger. So he hasn't been able to steal anymore, and so the supply is running low for the three of them. And their Skinny Pete and Badger start kind of following the 12 steps and don't really have an appetite for selling to addicts anymore. And you also see, for the first time, Walt and Skyler starting to kind of work like a team in getting their business afloat. Skyler gets introduced to Saul and kind of get brought in on the whole business side of things, and she wants to make sure it's done right. Jesse starts to make a friend with a girl named Andrea at the rehab place, and then through the conversations he has with her, finds out that her little brother was the one that shot his friend Combo. And so the episode ends with him figuring that out and looks to be very upset at it. So a lot of things to unpack here.
Yeah, I think that covers it. So the title of this episode, Albiqui. What do you got? What?
No idea. Didn't even look into it.
Yeah. You know, I think this might be the first time I'm completely stumped. I have no idea what on earth this means.
And that's okay. That's okay.
You know, I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's okay. So, I mean, Albuquerque, right? Sort of maybe an adjective that means something like, you know, this is totally Albuquerque. Albiqui.
Yeah, it's a little Kafkaesque, but sure.
Yeah, it's definitely Kafkaesque. That's for sure. If one thing's for sure, it's definitely Kafkaesque. You know, maybe they just needed to name it something, and they came up with this. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe something will come to us. So, okay, the introduction. What happens in the introduction? So, it's a scene that I thought was a thing that didn't happen, which was the scene is Jesse and Jane at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, which I thought they were going to do, and then they never did because Walt calls Jesse out into the desert to cook. So they must have gone another time.
Yep.
And it's comical and it's cute, and Jesse's, you know, his normal self, and Jane is her more cultured self in the museum there, and then we see at the very end of the intro Jane smoking a cigarette and putting the butt in of the cigarette in Jesse's car with her lipstick on it, and we remember, oh, he was staring at that, so he's kept that as a memento, not just of Jane but of that day, that moment when they were at that museum. And it reminds us that Jane still means something to Jesse. He's not completely over her, and she's still present with him. So I don't know what else to say about that in the intro, except that the makers of this show want us to know that Jesse is still thinking of her and remembers her.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
So then we go to the lab, and Walt, like you said, is getting wise to Jesse's the different ways that Jesse could be stealing from them. And this confused me. So Walt notices that Jesse is the one who normally tells him how much the cook weighs, their batch, and so he says, I'll take note of that myself. And I'm just wondering if Walt genuinely thinks that Jesse's stealing from them. It seems like his old controlling self would have confronted Jesse and tried to say, hey, look, you could ruin this whole thing for us. Don't you know that this guy Gus is extremely dangerous, and he's playing 4D chess with the cartel, and all of this. And why doesn't Walt think, why does he think, Jesse, like, if you steal, Gus is going to think he's going to know it's just you, and he's going to hurt you, and I'm not going to be able to protect you. Why doesn't Walt think this is going to come down on both of us? Seems to me just a little odd given Walt's character.
Yeah, he's kind of taken the role of hey, I'm just looking out for you, but he's not really taking it to the point of looking out for himself. Like he's obviously making sure that Jesse doesn't do it anymore, but when Jesse confronts him about it, he just says, "Hey, shh, like, don't say anything." You're right. He's not taking it with the kind of fear that you would think that he should have.
Well, let's take this first scene after the introduction and what I think is the last scene in the episode. Let's take those as sort of bookends that might go together. So the last scene, if I'm remembering right, is Walt going over to Gus's house for dinner, which is kind of odd. And Walt thinks it's odd, and Gus is inviting him to help cook this Chilean. I guess we learned that Gus is Chilean. I guess that would be the assumption. Exotic dish. Does he say, my kids don't like this, so I don't get to eat it very often? Or does he have kids?
The fish stew.
Yeah. Well, okay, so then Walt asks him, Walt's very uncomfortable. And he says, why did you bring me here, basically? And Gus says, well, I have some advice for you. And he says, okay, well, how would you advise me? And all he says is, never make the same mistake twice. And I'm thinking, okay, Gus knows exactly what's going on. He knows that Jesse is stealing from him, and he's trying to pressure Walt into not giving Jesse a sort of a second time to make the mistake. Like, he knows that Walt knows that Jesse's been stealing, and he's like, don't let him make this mistake twice. You need to nip it in the bud. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but
I think it's more of we don't have enough information yet. And I'm saying that not because I know the answer. I'm trying to think right now, and I think it's just because we don't know enough information. Because, like you said, it was kind of towards the end, so we're meant to ponder on it a little bit, but we might find out more later.
Right. Well, and it would make sense, in my mind at least, to pair the opening scene and the closing scene together, but maybe not. But I'm just throwing that out there because it is mysterious. We don't get. It's not obvious why Gus invites Walt over and what he's referring to when he says never make the same mistake twice. So I don't know. There it is. Well, let's get back to so after the scene in the lab where Walt is sort of taking over some of the Jesse's role a little bit. I love Badger. It never ceases to make me laugh when he says selling meth to people in the recovery meeting, he says, is like shooting a baby in the face.
Unnatural.
It's not natural. Yeah. I mean, you just don't, if you're going to, it's kind of dark, I guess, but I mean, shoot a baby anywhere, right? Like that's unnatural, right? Like anyway,
yeah.
In Badger's dark mind, shooting a baby in the face is particularly bad. You don't want to do that. But to his point is that it's kind of sick, right? What they're Jesse's plan to corrupt these people who are in good faith at some level, trying to better themselves. And then later in the episode, we learn that they are unintentionally, maybe at first, embracing the recovery program, and they're at various parts in the recovery process, church.
Yeah, and it's weird because Jesse's almost bashing them for doing that, even though that he went through the same steps himself. It's very, he didn't see this one coming.
We don't know if he actually he did. I'm still not sure. So we know he has his little recovery coin. Remember, it flashed. He flashed that 3 months or whatever it was sober, and we know that he stayed sober. But it's not like he has a sponsor that we know of, and that he's engaged in recovery work and sponsoring other people or anything like that.
Right. We just haven't seen him use since. That's all.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if he's really engaged in recovery, but he's not. He is staying sober. So, okay. And then the scene with Saul and Skyler. It was really uncomfortable at first because you're sort of like, oh wait, Skyler, you're not supposed to know about Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the first thing that we see, that Skyler sees in his office, is his diploma.
Oh yeah, wasn't
from the University of American Samoa.
Yep, that was it.
Which I haven't seen
his clientele.
Oh right. I honestly, at first, I thought they were just in some like medical clinic, though. People coughing and like in a crowded room,
and I'm sure she's also seen his face on TV.
Oh sure,
advocating for the obvious guilty.
Right. Yeah, no, but what I was going to say is I haven't seen Better Call Saul, but I kind of doubt that Saul actually went to the University of American Samoa. In fact, there might not even be a place called the University of American Samoa. There are probably various.
Something you'll have to find out.
Yeah, that's right. But it's obviously not an institution that anyone would know of as far as prestige for law school or for whatever he goes to study there. So Skyler is immediately not impressed with Saul. And we know that she's actually a pretty good accountant. She caught all those errors at Benecke's. And when it comes to numbers, she knows what she's doing. And when he tries to, when he says, well, let me just tell you what money laundering, he starts to grab his utensils to sort of make an object lesson. She's like, I know how to do this, right? In fact, the line early, when she's talking with Walt, she says, well, if you're gonna launder money, at least do it right. And she knows sort of what you would have to accomplish. It's not that she knows necessarily how to do it, but she knows what you would have to, the result would have to be right in order for it to sort of escape scrutiny.
So, and also Walt knows that she knows her stuff, and you could tell that he's just feeling very like embarrassed looking, because he's just like, Saul starts, like you said, picked up the utensils to kind of show, and he's just like, oh no, please stop, just stop, no, don't do it.
Right. No, Walt's in an awkward position because he knows that Skyler is better at that kind of thing than Saul realizes. And therefore, Skyler is worthy of a little more respect than Saul's going to give her.
Right.
But he also knows that Saul knows his stuff too and is worthy of more respect than Skyler is probably willing to give him. And so that leaves Walt in a very awkward position because neither one of the other two respects or trusts the other. And so he's kind of stuck in the middle. But the laser tag plan, it's plausible only because of the person who's willing to be corrupted in it and be a part of the
What they call it, the Danny. Every scheme needs a Danny.
That's right. You need somebody on the inside who's willing to
look the other way,
to be involved, to look the other way. That's right. So Saul calls her Yoko Ono, which I thought was really funny. Yoko Ono, of course, was the lover and wife, I guess. They got married to John Lennon, who famously is blamed for breaking up the Beatles. And so I guess Saul sees Skyler as potentially breaking up the arrangement that he has, or he thinks he has, with Walt and kind of Jesse, although we remember from an episode or two ago when Saul's like, look, if we have to kill Jesse, we have to kill Jesse, we just got to be ready to do that. So Saul definitely sees this as an arrangement that he has with Walt. And I think he sees Skyler as a threat to that. So what has to happen in the next episodes is one of those relationships has to go away, or Skyler and Saul have got to learn to start trusting each other more. So not sure what's going to happen, but we've seen this sort of seeds of doubt that have been planted. So we'll see where they go.
Yeah. It was refreshing though to see Walt and Skyler be truthful and honest with each other. Like when Skyler comes up with the idea of the car wash and she's asking him about, the business and stuff, he answers honestly, and you hadn't seen that at all. And she knows that he's answering honestly because the way he's handling the question. And it's the very first time you see that throughout the whole show, really.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about Jesse and Andrea. So to begin with, he is straight up using her really as to show Badger and Skinny Pete how easy it is to corrupt these people who are at the recovery meetings. And so he's seducing her and trying to get her to start using drugs by talking about it in such a way that's going to make it tempting for her. And so it's, we see a little bit of an arc where at the beginning of the episode, he's seeing her strictly as a means to an end and has no respect for her as a person whatsoever. And he's interrupted in his scheme to corrupt her by her son coming home. And it immediately made me think of that episode where Jesse's got to try and he ends up with the homeless couple who robbed Skinny Pete, I guess it was, or Badger, and
the ATM machine. Yeah.
The ATM machine. Yeah. And there's the kid that's there. And we were reminded that Jesse kind of has a soft spot for kids.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little awkward around them, but he's also, he's kind of an uncle figure. And so when the kid comes back, he sort of starts to see, he treats the kid well, and he starts to see Andrea more as a caretaker for this kid who has value to Jesse. And eventually Andrea and Jesse get closer. And there's that scene when he picks her up from the meeting. So tellingly, Jesse's not at the meeting.
Right.
But Badger and Skinny Pete are. And that's when they come up and say, yeah, we're step 5 or step 3 or, whatever. And And Jesse has this kind of, he looks down on them for embracing recovery and not trying to sell drugs to these people. And then he picks up Andrea. So at that point, he's kind of in the middle. So when he starts out, he sees Andrea strictly as a means to an end, and he's trying to just use her. And then at this point in the episode, he sees he has affection for her, and he cares for her, and he picks her up and he puts his arm around her, and he's beginning to want her own good for her own sake, as an end in herself, not just as a means to his own ends. And then as the scenes progress, we see them together, and then Andrea asks if they could if he could get some meth for them, and he completely loses it and says, what kind of a mother are you?
I would say rightfully so, to be honest. I get it. Like, I myself, I'm a father,
Mm-hmm.
So to be doing that when your child is going to be home any minute, or what'd he say, a couple hours or something, and you're about to shoot up meth. But then right after that, he obviously apologizes and starts to relate with her a little bit, I guess. But yeah, she she was not a fan of the call out per se.
Well, let's think about it for just a second. So it's odd that Jesse would care, right? Originally, he just wants her to buy meth, and she's there and she's ready to buy meth. If he wanted to, he could have achieved his original goal and said, yeah, I happen to have some in my, my pocket or my car. This is how much it costs though. And I can't just buy it all myself. So if you want to pay me for it, that's what he was out to do. But instead, he now cares about her and cares about her son. And I think she agrees with him. She gets offended. She's like, no, I'm a good mother. And we're all like, no, wait, you were about to not be a good mother, actually. And then, but then she says, I'm not going to let him go down the path of Tomas, her younger brother, who got involved in drugs. And so she has a contradiction. On one hand, she was about to do drugs, and on the other hand, she's like, I would never do that. And it's like, no, you were actually just about to do that.
Yeah.
But she ends up agreeing with him. Right. A good mother doesn't let herself get high because she knows there's a lot at stake. And then the really interesting thing happens where she relates the story of her brother, Tomas, the young kid who got involved with this gang, I guess, and ended up killing this other person. And then as Jesse pursues it, he finds out that person that he killed was Combo. And as I'm putting all this together in my mind, I'm thinking, for that kid, Tomas, he didn't care about Combo. Combo was just a means to an end for him. He was wanting the acceptance. He was wanting the money, whatever he got out of that deal. And in a way, I think Jesse has a realization that when they were dealing, I think he realizes that he was using Combo just as a dealer. Remember, he doesn't go to his funeral. He's not involved in any of that, right? Like, he saw Combo at that point as a means to an end. This guy sells meth for me and I get money and influence and all of that. But as Jesse pursues it, and he, I don't know why he goes to the same spot and buys meth, which is a dangerous thing that he knows. It's dangerous to buy meth anyway, especially when there's people that he doesn't trust who are involved, and these gangster thugs show up and take his money and then leave. And he's not sure. The kid doesn't tell him, hey, here's what's going to happen. These guys are going to come and roll up. You're going to give them their money, and then I'll give you the drugs. He's left completely. It could have easily happened that he pulled out a gun and said, hey, give me my money back, or give me the drugs, or something like that. Could have gone really poorly for him.
Right.
Or they could have recognized him. hey, you're that, you're that Pinkman guy, right? Because remember, his name was getting out there. They could have shot him, right? You're the guy who was threatening our territory. So the whole pursuit of him wanting to know the truth, what happened to Combo, seems very foolish. Yeah, but it gets obsessive, and it tells me that Jesse really wanted to learn the truth. Why did he want to learn the truth? I think he's starting to see, in the same way that he starts to see Andrea as an end and not as just a mere means. I think he's starting to see Combo was an end in himself too, and not just a means for Jesse. And so all of this is kind of crashing down at the same time for him. And he's lost Combo, and he can't really, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen between him and Andrea, but he's certainly not going to continue his plan to use her. So he's been struck morally, right, by this realization that he can't treat people the way that he wanted to, because they are not mere tools. They are, in fact, ends in themselves.
And you also mentioned that he has a soft spot for kids. So Tomas,
right,
being one of them. So
yeah. And then the last scene we've already discussed, when Walt goes over to Gus's house. Any comments on that scene? I mean, it's not like I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was a townhouse or anything. Might have been, but it's not like a mansion. It's not like a big house. I mean, he's definitely playing the role of a guy who makes modest money and doesn't he doesn't live extremely.
Well, remember the conversation. He says, "I made many mistakes when I started out."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's showing more that he is coming from a place of, I've been doing this a long time, therefore what you see comes from years of experience.
Right.
And he even says, like, anyone can be poor, you must learn how to be rich.
Right. So, right. Yeah, and part of what it means to learn to be rich is to not appear extremely rich.
Right.
Don't attract attention and all that, which Walt actually has no problem with. This is the guy still eating PB&Js.
Yeah.
At least Gus knows how to live well occasionally by enjoying a glass of good wine and an exotic fish stew. So, well, I still haven't figured out what Albiqui means.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up and probably talk about it on the next episode.
Okay. Well, that's all I got. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode. If you like what we're doing here, please share, subscribe, like, and we really mean that, because we don't charge anything for these episodes. So if you want to help give back, you can simply share this on social media, send it to a friend, like it. That'll help us with all of our algorithms and all of that. So we appreciate the interest, and we hope that other people are getting into this as much as we are. So thanks, and we will catch you guys next time as we break into another episode of Breaking Bad.